This presentation includes information from April 2023. For updated information, please visit Bexar County and/or San Antonio Legal Services Association.
To begin with, before we address any protest issues for your property, it's important that you verify what exemptions your property has to make sure that you have applied for everything that's available. Most of the exemptions that are common to everybody are the Homestead Exemption, the over 65 exemption, disability exemption, and a disabled veterans exemption. Some of the less common exemptions that are available are agricultural exemption, agricultural wildlife exemptions, and special properties such as schools, nonprofits, and churches. It's important to note here that if you do research on the Bexar Appraisal District website and find that your homestead exemption is not listed on there and should be, not to worry. There is a 2-year that the appraisal district will go back 2 years to allow and apply the exemption for homestead, over 65, and a disability exemption. The disabled veterans exemption has a 5-year period that it can go back and apply. As I stated before, the best place to go and verify this information is online at the Bexar Appraisal District website, which is bcad.org. When you search your property, you can use your address or your owner name to find the property information. The first screen that will pop up is for the year 2023. If the information is not available yet for 2023, change the year to 2022, so it will show you everything up to last year about the property. One of the things you want to look at to verify your exemptions is at the bottom of the first screen on the website. It'll list exemptions and it'll list a code for all the exemptions that apply to this property and to you. Let me make a note here that under the exemptions, if you see the word other, then the other designation is for the over 65 exemption. So the homestead exemption, to begin with, is applicable to any individual or married couple residing in the residence full-time. It provides exemptions for various taxing authorities in various amounts, including a $40,000 exemption from the school district. Unless an exception applies, the form must be submitted with a photocopy of your Texas ID or driver's license, matching the property information that you're applying for. The homestead exemption applies additional exemption amounts for some of the other taxing entities. At least $10,000 exemption is allowed for school districts. When you're applying for the over 65 exemption, you use the same form that you would to apply for your homestead exemption. And you'll see on the very first page of the exemption application, right on the same line as the general residence homestead exemption, you'll also see the person age 65 or older. If the Bexar Appraisal District has on file on your property the correct birthday information and an existing homestead exemption on file, the over 65 exemption will automatically be applied the year you turn 65. If the homestead exemption is already in file but has not been added yet, an additional form may be required. Just update the birthday information with Bexar Appraisal District showing an ID. If you are not able to go into the office to the Bear Appraisal District, you can always submit a form by mail or online. The disability exemption are for those individuals who, through a state agency, has been classified as a disabled individual. The Homestead Exemption application can also be used to apply for a disabled person exemption. The disabled homestead exemption generally operates the same as a 65 and over exemption and is combined with the regular homestead exemption. But the 65, over 65 and the disability exemptions will not both apply at the same, to the same taxing unit. In most cases, the over 65 exemption does have a greater exemption value. Regarding the disability homestead exemption, surviving spouses are also eligible for the exemption if their qualifying spouse has died. It will require proof of disability determination. The application should also include a copy of the disability determination letter from the Social Security Administration. Now, the next exemption is the disabled veteran exemption, 100%. A 100% disabled veteran receives a complete exemption from all property taxes on their homestead. Veterans with this designation from the VA can elect this exemption using the normal homestead exemption form. This exemption requires that you submit a verification letter from the VA claim information as shown. Our volunteers can assist you find that information if you don't know how to. And let me also make a point to say that surviving spouses are also eligible for this exemption. A veteran that has a less than 100% rating qualifies for an exemption according to the following chart, but must file a different form that is not included in your packet. If you need that form, volunteers will assist you to locate that form and complete the information required. Basically, what it will be required is a full $12,000 exemption is available to the veteran, depending on the rating, the disability rating by the Veterans Administration. 70% to 99% will allow for $12,000 off your assessed value. 50 to 69% will allow for a $10,000 off your assessed value. 30 to 49% will allow for $7,500, and a 10 to 29% rating will allow for $5,000 off the assessed value. The next exemption that we will go over is the disabled veteran exemption. For a disabled veteran that is 100% disabled, he receives a complete exemption from all property. They receive a complete exemption from all property taxes on their homestead. Veterans with this designation from the VA can elect this exemption using the normal homestead exemption form. This exemption requires that you submit a verification letter from the VA. You can find this through your VA claim information. I should also note that surviving spouses are also eligible for this exemption. A veteran with less than 100% rating qualifies for an exemption according to the chart, according to the following information. A veteran with less than 100% rating qualifies for an exemption according to the following chart, but must file a different form. There are exemption ratings from 10 to 99% for a disabled veteran. And the exemption value is different with each category. The full $12,000 exemption is available to a less than 100% disabled veteran if the veteran is 64 years or older and has at least a 10% disability rating, or the veteran is blind in one or both eyes, or has lost the use of one or more limbs. For a less than 100% disabled veteran, the surviving spouse of a veteran is entitled to the same exemption the veteran qualified for at the time of their death. Spouse is qualified for the exemption until they remarry. If a service member dies while on active duty, the spouse is entitled to a $5,000 exemption and an additional $5,000 for each of the veteran's surviving children under the age of 18, living with the spouse. Veterans may only claim one disabled veteran exemption. Disabled veteran exemptions may be aggregated with other non-disabled veteran exemptions. Disabled veterans have up to 5 years after the delinquency date for taxes on the property to submit their application. The next section we are speaking of is the Heir Affidavit. What if I am not the owner of record? You can still claim an exemption if you are an heir to the owner in the deed records. This is common for family members who have not changed ownership of a residence after a family member dies. To get exemption, you must fill out the Heir Affidavit. If more than one heir of the property lives in the home, they all must sign. With this affidavit, you must also file a copy of the death certificate of the record owner, a current utility bill for the property address, and a copy of any court documents, if they exist, showing ownership interest of the property, such as an affidavit of heirship or a probated will. As I mentioned before, other less common exemptions that apply to special circumstances, such as the agricultural or wildlife exemption, a partial veteran's disability from 10 to 90%. There are exemptions for historic restoration and historic landmark property, and exempt organizational property, such as religious organizations, schools, nonprofits, etc.